Hi, I'm the old guy who just turned 80. And here's what I don't understand. Why do we treat bank robbers and trespassers better than undocumented immigrants who are law abiding? Let me tell you what I mean. When I was growing up, I was part of a group of guys. When we hung out together, we supported one another. We were a little bit crazy. One of us was maybe a little bit crazier than the rest. His name was Tyler. And when we were around 16, we were just kind of cruising, and we noticed that there was a car. I think it was a Ford Crestliner, parked in front of the corner store with its engine running and with its keys in the ignition. Somebody dared Tyler to steal the car. Tyler, who was a little bit crazier than the rest of us, said, okay, jumped out of the car, raced across the street, jumped into this other car, and drove away. We were kind of howling. He drove around for about 20 minutes and he left the car in a vacant lot. Came back. We'd been following him, so we picked him up and we all drove away. Okay, now fast forward about, 15 years. Tyler's now married. I've actually moved away from town, but we're all still really friends together. And I get a call from Tyler and he says, guess what? You'll never guess what happened. You remember Joe, the local sheriff? Well, he came into my mechanic shop. At that time, Tyler had become a mechanic, had his own shop, in fact. He had just set it up, was pretty much in debt. He'd married, he had two kids. He was coaching the high school basketball team. And he says to me, this local cop comes in and says, hey, we just installed a new computer system. And guess what? When we ran a set of fingerprints that we still had on some storage thing against the database, it came up with your name on it. Tyler was flabbergasted. But the cop said, look, don't worry about it. Grand Theft Auto has a statute of limitations that's only 7 years. This happened around 14, 15 years ago. You're off the hook, but we'll be watching you. Don't you ever do that again. So here was my takeaway. Somebody can commit a felony. Bank robbers can do it. They have a statute of limitation of 7 years nationwide. And after 7 years, if they keep their nose clean, if they're good citizens, if nobody catches on to what they did, that crime simply goes away. They can no longer be prosecuted. Here's another situation. I learned this when I was about 10 years old. Well, no, I'd say I learned it when I was about 35, but it started when I was 10. We had a neighbor, a Mr. Jennings. He was a pretty old guy. He lived across the street and down the block from us. And when he passed away, he left his place to his kids who had already moved out of the house and were somewhere on the West Coast. They didn't seem to care about the property. Maybe they didn't think it was worth very much. For whatever reason, they just neglected it. Cora, the lady who owned the house next to his, must have gotten tired of watching the grass grow every spring. And I mean, it really got up to knee high. It was pretty ugly. She started mowing the grass. And then a year or two later, she started planting a garden in Jennings' backyard. And a year or two after that, she put up a fence to keep the rodents and the deer and the rabbits from eating her garden. And as time went on, she went from planting tomatoes and squashes to putting some nice fruit trees in. Then about 25 years after Jennings died, this guy shows up dressed in a suit, knocking on her door, saying, Cora, you got to take that fence down. You got to cut those trees down. That property doesn't belong to you. Cora was really brokenhearted. She felt that she put the work in. She planted the trees. She loved harvesting the pears and the apples every fall. So she went and spoke to a lawyer to see if there was anything she could do. And she described what had happened to the lawyer. And the lawyer said, Cora, don't worry. You actually can fight and you will get that land. That land, that backyard is no longer going to be part of the Jennings estate because there's something called adverse possession. An adverse possession is a law followed in most states that you can take someone else's land and start working it. And if nobody disputes what you're doing on it, if you do it openly and you do it constructively, after a certain period of time, that land becomes yours. Time somehow has been incorporated into our legal system to say, yeah, if you did something wrong, but only one thing, and then you continue to live a good life, a constructive life, you forget about the crime that you committed. So here's my question, and I'm going to read this because it's really pretty important. This is what I don't understand. When an immigrant violates the rules by which they were allowed to enter the country, then gets a job, marries, raises a family, is a good father, a good neighbor, and a good member of the community, why isn't there something akin to a statute of limitations? Why is this worse than robbing a bank? And why isn't being a constructive member of the community as valuable as constructively using someone else's land? Why can't we as a nation, and constitutionally, that means Congress, give these constructive members of our communities and good fathers and mothers a path to citizenship after some number of years of good and constructive behavior? If anybody's out there who can really explain this to me, please do, because I don't understand.